Well, we're 9 points behind Chelsea already. I mean, it's not the end because they've had piss easy games of Chelsea, right? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Panenka podcast. I am your host, Callum. Today, I'm joined here by Harvey.
Hello.
And a new guest, Nat. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Nat. It's nice to be on here.
Nat runs a nice little page on Instagram with 50,000 followers. You know, we're getting that clout. But anyway, today is the second episode of our rebuilding series. Today, we're going to be rebuilding Arsenal, unfortunately. You thought Man United were bad. This has got so bad where we are. This is going to
be interesting.
This is so bad to the point where we are literally going to be rebuilding them for Champions League, not for winning, because the win will be here all year. But anyway, simply, it's going to be the same format that we did last time, where we're manager, goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, forward, and we're going to say what we should do, what changes they should make to, you know, start to push for Champions League again. So we're going to start with the manager. Nat, what do you think Arsenal should do about the manager situation?
I think that Arsenal, we've got to stick with current manager, which is Arteta, because he's only just come in recently, and you can't be getting rid of a manager straight away. You've got to give him a few seasons. You've got to back him in a transfer window, because there's a lot of dead wood in our team currently, and he's already starting to see that. Like, he's leaving out players like Ozil, who he clearly doesn't see fitting in his team in the future. So you've got to let him have a transfer window, get rid of the deadwood, and that's the only way that he's going to be able to build the team that he wants. Because if you keep replacing the manager, you're never going to get a proper rebuild. So yeah, I'd say definitely stick with Arteta for at least 2 seasons.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with that. Harvey, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm along the same sort of lines, to be honest. He's not been in charge for long enough for people to make like a solid judgment on him just yet. Obviously, anybody who has the Arsenal job is going to be under loads and loads and loads of attention. Bad press, this, bad press, that. You know, it's almost a meme to make the Arsenal manager look bad. You had it the same with. Towards the end of Arsene Wenger's career, you have the same with. Sorry?
Unai Emery.
What am I talking about? Sorry. Yes, I am. Wrong club. Unai Emery as well. Sorry, yeah. He, for most of the time he was that. Maybe a little bit at the start he was sort of let off because he was new. But as it went on, it got worse and worse. And now I think. Make a break for Arteta. If he has a good transfer window and next season comes in strong, we'll have to see, because if Arsenal find themselves mid-table again next season, he won't be keeping hold of his job, and it's as easy as that.
Yeah, so it looks like we all agree on the manager front to keep Arteta and giving him a chance. Because when he first came in, he did show promise. I believe he went undefeated throughout his first few games, and then obviously came the Man City game.
Yeah.
That naturally knocked confidence in a young team, you know, the way they got absolutely beaten. And probably the injuries as well. Arsenal, since the comeback, have got quite unlucky with injuries, with Mare, with Leno, you know.
Key players.
Yeah, but speaking of Leno, we're going to move on to goalkeepers. And I think I'm going to start off with, I think Leno's definitely good enough to be the Arsenal number 1. And I think Martinez is good enough for a number 2. I really think Arsenal don't need to pour any money into goalkeepers, especially since they have such big holes in the team that need to be sorted out. I think if I was Arteta, I'd keep Leno and Martinez and not really make any changes, because I think Leno's proven this season that he's probably carried Arsenal to a fair few points with his saves. Even in the Man City game, I believe he made like something like 3 key saves in half an hour or something, or it might have even been more than that. But, you know, if you're that talented in goal, it's clearly the defence that's a problem for him. But I want to know, Harvey, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Much like the Arsenal manager role, the goalkeeper, and for that matter, any other player on the pitch, has this expectation almost to live up to, sort of wearing the Arsenal badge. And I think in recent years, that's sort of the meaning of the Arsenal badge has faded more and more because of where they finish in the league and, you know, bad signings, all that sort of stuff. I think Leno as the number 1 is probably the way forward, with Martinez as a backup. definitely.
Yeah, and last but not least, Nat, what do you think they should do?
Yeah, I've got to agree with both of you. I think Leno's definitely proven himself to be good enough. He had a bit of a shaky season when he first arrived, but you know, he's definitely proven in recent games that he's probably our best player this season, I'd say. And he's carried us to a lot of points. He makes key saves every game, and he's not making mistakes like previous keepers have. Like, for example, we used to have Czech in goal, and he was just a liability. And Leno is definitely a lot more trustworthy. So yeah, I'd keep Leno. Martinez is fine as a second keeper. You can play him in the cup games when Leno's fit, obviously, and he's playing the league games. But yeah, I definitely agree. We don't need to invest any money in keepers. There's a lot more key areas that we need to focus on. So yeah, definitely keep those two keepers. I'd agree.
Yeah, so surprisingly, the first two little segments have gone quite easy for us. Keep the manager, keep your goalkeepers.
This is the interesting part, though.
Oh God, here we go.
Here we go. Defense, and so what I've been looking at, the way I look at it is, if I was Arteta, I would start playing a three back with wing backs, kind of what Conte played, because I feel like you can still play that tiki-taka football. That he likes that, that Pep Guardiola style, even with a five back, especially because if he wants to play David Luiz, which clearly he does, then you have to have two other centre backs with him, and you've just got to let David Luiz sweep up, because he can't hack it like he used to be able to at Chelsea. He has to just sweep now and let other people hold the priority. And, they've got Holding, Socrates, Saliba coming in, Chambers, Pablo Mari. They've got good backup centre-backs, but, kind of starting centre-backs maybe is a problem. So, I'll speak about some of the centre-backs I've got in a few moments. But, Nat, what do you think should happen with the centre-back position?
It's an interesting one. I mean, for years now, we've had an issue with our defence. I mean, I'd say ever since, the last time we won the league, we've just had such an issue with it, and it's just slowly got worse and worse. You've just got so many players that are complete liabilities in that defence. Like, I don't think you can look at that Arsenal defence and look at a centre back right now and think, right, I trust him to, keep the ball and distribute it, or even just defend. It's awful. You've got to look at the games, and you're playing people like David Luiz, and I'm sorry, but some of the mistakes that he's made in recent games for us, you just cannot do when you're playing for Arsenal. I mean, we're still a big club, and if you're making those mistakes, it's costing games. He completely cost us the match against Manchester City. We were in the game up until he came on, and then obviously, he gives away a penalty, gets a red card, and gives them a free goal essentially with the mistake he made for Sterling. And that's only just like one of them. And then you've got Mustafi, who's again a liability. So, centre back position is just you need two new centre backs. I mean, we have got promising young talent, I suppose. We've got Rob Holding, who is actually quite solid. He's been playing well when he's fit, but he's not the sort of player that we need right now. We need experience to come in and somebody to lead the defence. Like, you look at Liverpool and they've signed Van Dijk, and he's come in and he's been that leader in the defence. Like, you can look at him and trust him to sort of organise the defence. Whereas you look at Arsenal, and I can't name one defender at all that I think, right, you can take foot and sort of put your marker down and, make a difference. But yeah, it's a serious issue. The defence has been what's really let Arsenal down in recent seasons. So that's, I think, where we need to really invest the money. But yeah, I don't know. It's appalling, really. I want to say a lot more, but I can't on this podcast, honestly. But there's a lot of things I want to say, but it's definitely the position that we need to focus on. In my opinion, it's the key area that we need to improve on.
Yeah, I think it's kind of why this idea of Arsenal kind of being a joke club have come. It's not, they're scoring goals. Aubameyang scoring goals, but it's not, they're able to get points, but the way they lose points always seems to be from a stupid defensive mistake. Like David Luiz giving 2 goals to Man City.
Yeah, you just can't do that playing at the top level, especially against, quality opposition like Man City. They're going to punish you. Like, I mean, even today, playing against Sheffield in the FA Cup, there were two goals that were luckily disallowed for being offside. For our, as Arsenal fans, we're lucky that those were disallowed. But I mean, within the first 10 minutes, there was a goal disallowed, and it was just awful defending. Nobody taking charge in the box, nobody challenging, and it's stuff like that where even against Sheffield, you're going to get punished. So you need somebody that's really going to come in and put the foot down and, clear those balls and, sort of make a difference. But you've got to pay big money for that. And unfortunately, at Arsenal, we don't really have the owners who are willing to invest that. So it is worrying, but that's definitely the position that we need to focus on.
Yeah, and, to quote a legend of our circle, if you don't win the big games, you can't win the big leagues.
Oh, dear. Well, am I wrong there? Am I wrong?
No, but
legendary quote.
They need to do something, even if that's spending their entire transfer budget on a good centre back. They have to do something because, like, Socrates is a good quality centre back, and I think he's proved that for Arsenal that he's a good centre back. But then again, Socrates is 30, 31 now. When's he going to start falling off eventually because of age?
Yeah. Well, we just keep signing old players. Like we're signing David Luiz, and there's a reason why Chelsea have sold him. If he was still top quality, they wouldn't sell him. And that's the problem. We've become a club that just settle for sort of rejects from other clubs. And, if you want to really compete and get in the Champions League, you can't be just signing rejects from other clubs.
Mentality, that.
It is.
That's what I've been doing for a decade.
It's not good enough for Arsenal. We've got a lot of money sat in the bank, but, we're not willing to spend it. And that's the issue. Like, you've got to go out there and pay top money for a centre-back. I mean, Liverpool are the prime example. I think they spent, 75 million on Van Dijk, but it's worth every penny because, in my opinion, he's been that key player that's really come in and sorted them out. And for me, he's really the player that, if you had to pick one standout player, he's that player who's come in and really, I'd say, won them the league as such, because they were they were finishing 7th and 8th in the league because they couldn't defend. And Van Dijk's coming in, he's completely changed that round. And I'm not saying he's obviously, going to be the best centre-back in the world or anything, but he has come in and he's shown that he's top quality. And he's shown that if you go out and pay the money, he's going to make a difference. But unfortunately, Arsenal aren't willing to invest that. So it's the issue where, we're never really going to get over this defensive problem if we're not going to go out and spend the money.
Yeah, I feel like football showed you have to spend the money. Like, an example from my own time was we signed Richarlison for 50 million. Everyone, laughed, what a waste of money. We could have sold Richarlison for 85 in January.
No, definitely, yeah.
That's the way football works. You've got to spend money, even if it's spending big money on one player and that being your one transfer window, and then maybe trying to be smart and go through the Championship for a good defender or something, I think Arsenal for backups, you're good. It's just, that one starting centre-back, and, I've got, even one here who might cost you one. I've got Chris Smalling, had a great season at Roma, a tackle a game, 2 interceptions, 5 clearances,
Yeah. It's that he's got that experience, and that's what we need. But is he that long term centre back that's really going to change things around? He's not. But is that what Arsenal? We need a long term solution, but unfortunately, the way that the club's going at the moment, we're not going to get that. So it is sort of just 1-2 season sort of buys. But
Chris Smalling, centre back with almost 50 England caps, someone who might help Saliba and Rob Holding some more,
Yeah.
Because at least with Chris Smalling, he's a bit older, but at least he's safe, he's not going to make stupid passes or try to flick the ball over world-class attackers' head, or even look what David Luiz did against Brentford. Flicked it over the Brentford player head and mistake.
Criminal,
I mean, he's showing even Championship teams are taking advantage of David Luiz's mistakes.
It's ridiculous. Like, I mean, teams now look at Arsenal on the fixture list and think, we've got a chance of beating them. Like, they feel confident when they come to players. And back, in the days of like Patrick Vieira, Tony Adams, Sol Campbell, teams would look at us and think, oh God, like, I don't want to, come and face Arsenal because we don't feel like we've got a chance. Like that, those centre-backs like Sol Campbell, Tony Adams, attackers would fear, sort of even trying to take them on. Whereas now you look at our defence and attackers relish the fact that they come to play Arsenal. They look at David Luiz, Mustafi, and they think, oh, we've got a field day here. And you can't be having that, because they're just going to completely tear us apart. And it's been shown. We've been torn apart season after season recently. So we do need to sort that urgently. Because I feel like we're not that far off. If we can sign even just one top quality centre-back that's really like a Van Dijk, if we can sign somebody like that, that's going to come in and make an instant impact, we're not far off really competing for the Champions League, because I think the defence is the big issue. We've not really got a problem going forward. I mean, obviously that's an issue for later on, attacking-wise, but I feel like we've got Aubameyang and players like that, but for now. So it is just the defence that really is the worry. But yeah, we're not far off. We just really need to go out and invest the money.
Yeah, well, I mean, the issue is if you want to play David Luiz, I feel like instead of playing in a back four, you play him in a back three with two wing backs, just because naturally, then he can sweep. He doesn't have to. He's not as error prone where he doesn't really have to. It seems like Arteta has signed him to be a ball playing defender, and if you want that, really, a league where Man United have just proven you can dip there, and if someone's being world class, Bruno Fernandes, you might get a steal, and an example is Benfica's Ruben Diaz, not the highest tackle numbers with about 1.5 tackles, about 3 clearances. But then if you want someone who can play the ball out, you've got someone who's passing, 65 times a game with 90% completion. He's got half a key pass a game, 5.5 long balls. If you want someone who can play a ball, there's someone like that in Portugal, or, he's probably still going to cost you 40, 50 million, but he's not going to cost you 70, 80 like big English centre-back will.
No, I think that's sort of the option that we're going to have to go for. We don't really have a choice, but like you said, I'd definitely be happy with, a signing like that, because I think it's a lot more common now that defenders need to be able to play with the ball at their feet. I feel like, you go back a few years and defenders can just hoof it out, but it's a lot different now. Like you look at Man City and they've got Laporte who can play with the ball at his feet, and Van Dijk can play with the ball at his feet. So you need somebody that can really pass it out and, sort of distribute it well. And we don't have that at all at the moment. So, the players get put under a lot of pressure, especially Arsenal, when we don't have the ball. And then when we have the ball, attackers just press us a lot because they know that we're not comfortable on it defensively. So I think, somebody that can play the ball out and is confident that way would definitely be a good addition. And if it's 40, 50 million, it's not really, breaking the bank too much. So I'd be definitely happy with something like that.
Yeah, and so we're not here all year. Harvey, is there anything you'd like to say about the centre-backs before we move on?
I think something that's quite interesting that we haven't mentioned yet is only a couple of days ago on the 24th, Luiz did actually sign a 1-year contract extension. Literally, I think this was a day or two after the big mistake that he made.
Yeah, it's ridiculous,
The horrible game he had, at City. I think the team usually plays, a 4-2-3-1, I think Arsenal are sort of known for, or in the last year or so at least. Yeah. They've got these wide fullbacks like Hector Bellerin, who would, from what I've seen, works far better as a wing back rather than your sort of normal fullback or whatever. You've got Saka as well, who's sort of taken on a more sort of defensive role of late, rather than his midfielder sort of role that he sort of burst out with. He would be a good player for the future, but if I'm going to be honest, I think a lot of the back line for Arsenal just need to go. We've seen so many fullbacks come in, washed up fullbacks that have just come in, done nothing, and they've just fallen off the face of the earth. We had Lichtsteiner come in a couple of years ago. What happened to him? Where's he gone? I haven't heard that name in God knows how long.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't. Now this might sort of turn a few heads when I say this, but the big Bosnian seed Kolasinac, I don't rate him. He's a donkey on the ball. Yes, he's a big guy, and yes, he might have saved Ozil from getting robbed at knife point or whatever it was. But at the end of the day, mate, you're there to do a job, and you're not doing it. So I don't rate him. I don't like him. I think he's naff. Kieran Tierney came with so much potential, hasn't started half the season. And when he has played, he hasn't shined. So I don't see a lot of promise for the backline for Arsenal. I think putting it down to buying a player like Van Dijk isn't fair almost. It doesn't do it justice, because a player like Van Dijk doesn't just come around for each team. Man United tried with their Harry Maguire. Yes, you could argue that he's done bits of that defence, but equally, he's not a Van Dijk, and you won't find another Van Dijk. Van Dijk is his own player, He can score goals with his head, with his feet. He's had a good free kick on him in the past. He's quick, he's strong. He went second for Ballon d'Or. Not many sort of players that aren't strikers do that. I don't think it's fair to put it down to one player. I think it needs to be a lot of money injected into Arsenal, a lot of money put into their sort of transfer fees and whatnot, into their funds, and just a complete rebuild with sort of players that are in their prime now. I think Smalling would be a good idea. I don't think, at least from what I've seen and what I've heard from you, Nat, as well, that Arsenal don't have the pocket to sort of bring in these huge players. And if they're going to look at sort of replacing a lot of the team, which in my book, and when we get to it later, they will have to do. They're going to have to look at bringing in players that aren't superstars, but are sort of comfortable with where they're at now. I've got the list of every single registered defender for the first team here, and I can't think of a name that impresses me. Hector Bellerin, a couple of years ago, when he burst on the scene, everyone was saying, oh my God, this, that, and the other. He's faster than Walcott. No way, he's this, that. The guy's a model. That's his most sort of redeeming quality, is that he wears fancy things on Instagram and makes sort of headlines for wearing 65,000 pair of loafers or whatever, some crap like that. It's a joke, and I think this sort of pays into the price of why Arsenal have this reputation of just being a joke club. And all of this, Matt, is nothing against you at all, because I'm a West Ham fan and I know what it's like to be a joke club. But as a West Ham fan, I recognise where we're meant to be. Bottom on a good day, mid-table team, for the most part, bottom. Not attractive football, not these big names. Arsenal historically have been this club that have been way up high. They had the unbeaten season. They've got numerous league titles and FA Cup wins under them. They had Arsene Wenger era with them as well. But I just haven't seen that sort of club. And sorry to waffle. I know this is only about the defenders at the moment, but now that we've got to it, it's something that I think will apply to not just the defence, but all over the pitch. I think the goalkeeper escapes lucky here, but I think Arsenal need lots of attention all over the field. That is my waffle over for the defence, I think, before I go too deep, get in trouble.
Yeah, I feel like with the full-backs, I feel like realistically, Kieran Tierney was injured. I think he deserves a chance. He was okay against Man City, but he couldn't have saved that. Bellerin,
well, against Man City, I can't think of one player that even turned up. Apart from Leno, he's the only player that really I could think did the coach home. The other should have walked it home. It was just shambles against City, but yeah.
Well, yeah, as well, and I think Bellerin, to be honest, when he tries and when he's on his days, I think he's one of the better right backs in the league. I feel like when he really puts his foot down and works, he is really talented. But will he do that? But I feel like under Arteta, a fellow Spaniard, maybe someone he looked up to, might be able to bring the best out of Bellerin.
I think while we're here, just quickly, we mentioned this before actually on a different podcast. There's not, or at least I don't see a player in the defence at least that plays football for the badge knowingly. I think you could put a case forward for Rob Holding, obviously brought up through the ranks. I think with Arsenal not having Arteta as the manager, an Arsenal boy for some time, I think maybe we could see like a change of mind from some players. Some players are going out and putting everything they've got on the line to get their club forward, rather than, like with Bellerin, a fashion icon, or like with Louise, he wants to stay in English football because that's where it is globally. Rather than sort of taking the paycheck, I would like to see a lot more players playing for the badge. And I think with Arsenal bringing through these youth players that they've got a lot of at the moment, and we'll talk about more as we go forward with the team, hopefully we'll see more of that. I think that'll play into Arsenal's future success for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But if I'm Arteta, I simply just do not touch the fullback right now. It's not like it's a situation of Arsenal, having money. They need to work on other parts of the pitch, and fullbacks. I feel like they've got struck lucky with fullbacks. 25 million for Tierney, I think, was a good price. Bellerin, I think Bellerin doesn't play for the badge all the time, but he's shown that he does, and I think his loyalty to the team has shown that. But before we're here all day about the defence, that's what we think about the defence. It's god awful. But anyway, if we move on to the midfield, this is where I think it gets quite interesting and where it actually has some potential for Arsenal, with, in my opinion, them having some decent players like Torreira and Danny Ceballos can be okay, but he's only on a loan. Nat, what do you think about the Arsenal midfield?
I think it's another interesting area. I think we've got a lot of good players, but they're not top quality players. I look at our midfield, and we've got some potential coming through. We've got Guendouzi, who's young. He's promising, and he's shown that he's got quality, but obviously he just lacks that experience and sort of discipline. You've got Xhaka, who, for me, I'm just so in the middle about Xhaka. I think he's a good player, and the stats have actually shown that whenever he plays, we do tend to win most of our games. But is he that sort of top quality midfielder that we need? I'm not too sure. You're looking at also, I was just thinking actually, well, Saka, who's one of our youth players, he's essentially a defender, but he's been playing sort of more up the pitch in midfield. And he's actually been probably one of the sort of finds of the season, I think, because when he's played for us, he's got quite a few assists and he's not scared to go forward at all. And he's been quite a key player in our recent matches. He's been the one that's sort of shown, desire to go forward. So midfield, I think, and then you've got Ozil as well, but I mean, he's just sort of a lot more at this point in time. He's just sort of picking up a wage packet at the moment. He didn't even make it to the bench anymore. So definitely we need to offload, quite a few of them. I think if you're wanting to, for this current stage, you're going to keep Xhaka because he's that sort of player that sort of sticks in there.
A holding midfield.
Yeah, sort of gets himself stuck in, which is what we need. You've got Guendouzi, who's obviously a prospect. You can't expect him to do all of it. You can't expect him to do the full job right now. And Ozil, he just needs offloading, I think. He doesn't even perform when he plays. And he's on a stupid wage. And I think, talking about the transfer budget, I mean, 350 grand a week, if you can get that off the wage bill, that really does free up quite a lot of money to sign other players or give money to other players as well. But the midfield, I think, it's a problem. But again, I just think it's not the key area that we need to focus on right now. But I mean, it's just, again, it's not good enough to be challenging for the Champions League, and that is what we need to be aiming for right now, because currently we are a mid-table team. And, as Arsenal, we shouldn't be a mid-table team. We're not the sort of club that should be there. We're not Tottenham. We've got history and stuff, so we need to be up there challenging. But yeah, it's just a massive overhaul's needed. But like I said, Arteta needs time. He needs to offload the players that he doesn't like and doesn't see fitting into his system, and hopefully sign some players that he can see sort of improving us.
Yeah, so I feel like the midfield, if we're working on a small budget, you can't really change much of it. But one man who has been rumored is Thomas Partey, and that's for a swap with Lacazette. And if I'm brutally honest, I feel like with Saka, Martinelli, and Nketiah, they're decent. I feel like Saka or Martinelli will start. I feel like, to be honest, they have deserved to. I would put Saka over Martinelli right now because Martinelli, he gets goals, but he does seem a bit more raw than Saka. And I feel like Saka has proved he's got attacking talent, but I think a breakout from left back's harder than as a left winger. But I feel like if I was Arsenal, I take the punt and I give Atletico Lacazette for Thomas Partey. And, Partey's proved his talents in Madrid for a few years now. He's averaging around 3.6 tackles, 1.5 interceptions, and then I think he's averaging like almost 2 dribbles a game. Yeah, he's averaging, he's averaging 2 dribbles a game, 1.6 key passes a game,
Yeah.
And I think that was Champions League I was saying. So even if we look into the La Liga, that's, 2 tackles, 1.3 interceptions, 1.2 clearances, then we go into dribbles, 1.7 dribbles, a key pass a game. And you have to look at it from the perspective that, it's not like Atletico got to the Champions League group stages and then got knocked out. Atletico are still in the Champions League after knocking out Liverpool. And, if they're saying, we'll accept that for Lacazette, I feel like Arsenal, with the forward talent they're bringing through, I feel like that's something they have to say yes to.
100%. I agree with that. Definitely. He's definitely a player that would fit into the way we play as a team. And he would definitely improve the midfield currently. Because, you've got players, like Torreira, who are good, but they're not really that, they're not that player that you can look at and think, you're solid. He's an average player. He does his job, but he's not that sort of player you think, all right, you're standout. And I think Partey would definitely be a good signing. He's quite young as well. And if it's for Lacazette, I think 100% you should swap it, because Lacazette to me he's an average quality striker in my eyes, and has been for some time now. He's really not sort of hit it off in the Premier League like the way I thought he might do. So yeah, and Lacazette's sort of getting on now age-wise. Obviously, he's not anywhere close to retiring, but he's definitely not young. So I think it would definitely be a deal that Arsenal should capitalise on, if that is the case.
Yeah, so I don't know how you believe, Harvey. I don't know if you agree with us that maybe, bringing someone like Thomas Partey in for a Lacazette swap is a good idea, because I really think he could solidify the midfield. But anyway, Harvey, what do you think about something like that?
I'm not going to be as harsh as I was with the defence. I do look at this team and I think, they've got a lot going for them, but equally I think Nat said earlier, there's a lot of players that just need to leave Arsenal and stop sort of coming out and making these half-hearted performances. Arteta needs to just put his foot down and say, look, I need you, and I don't need you, and you. And I think with this team, from what I've heard in the last week at least, you got Guendouzi is apparently unsettled and thinking of moving, or wanting to move, sorry. Ozil is deadwood. If you say anything but that, I cannot agree with you. And you'd have to do well to change my mind of anything, because he hasn't been good for 2 years. He's 31, he's turning 32 later this winter, sorry. Lucas Torreira, I think he's been brilliant. I don't agree with the Kante versus Torreira debate and him being better. I think Kante's miles better than that man. But as far as Arsenal go, I think he's a good little workhorse to keep in the middle. I think he does enough on the field for the fan base to respect him and to want him to stay. I think if he did go, fans would be outraged by it, because he's been one of the better midfielders that they've seen there in the last few years at least. Granit Xhaka, Nat definitely said this earlier, 50-50. I've got a few mates that support Arsenal, and half of them seem to absolutely detest him, and some of them think that he's God's gift. I don't think there's any sort of in the middle. I know a while ago he had a bad run of games, and he got a lot of stick from the fan base, and there was a petition going around to get him to stand down from being captain. I don't actually know if that was the case. Has he stepped down now, or is he still the captain?
He got stripped of his captaincy, and I think rightly so, because he disrespected the badge and the fans. Obviously, he was under a lot of stick, and I can understand, from his point of view, it's tough, wear the captain's armband and constantly be, abused. But at the end of the day, you're playing for Arsenal. It's a big team, and as soon as you step in to this football club, that there's expectation on you. And, if you're not turning up and you're costing us at the time, which he was definitely, he was really costing us points in a lot of the mistakes that he was doing. He was making, silly passes that were just giving away possession. He wasn't really tracking back enough. And at the end of the day, the fans, pay a lot of money to go watch the football. And if you're constantly making mistakes, they're going to voice their opinion. And I think the fans have a right to voice their opinion.
Every club has the same. But I think with Arsenal being what they've sort of known to be over the last 2 or 3 decades, this huge club that plays at the top of English football. Now with, I think you just saw my sock and sandal there, actually, that was gross. With him sort of being the player that people look to hold the midfield, I don't think he's got it in his locker. Now, on the other hand, a slightly more positive note, we've seen Joe Willock come through the Arsenal ranks. He's proved this season, he can score goals. He's got good feet. He can get back and forward. I don't think he's had a lot of time to sort of prove himself. He'll turn 21 later this summer, which I think is a brilliant sign for Arsenal. And if they can manage to keep a player like that at the club, it'll encourage more sort of youngsters that are coming to the Arsenal ranks to think, hang on a minute, if this guy stayed here since he was 12, 13 years old, why can't I? And then sort of go on to become a club icon. I think that's a thing that clubs like Man United have had for so long. They've always had this player come through their ranks, burst on the scene and be the top dog in the club, get all the headlines sort of thing. I think Arsenal needs more of that. Matthew Smith as well, another good player. We haven't seen half as much as him on the field, but again, showing great signs of what Arsenal need in the next few years, like a burst of pace every now and then. Xhaka is... There's no words. He's slow. He's like a donkey. I think I said earlier about the same with Louise. He'll have one good game and expect everyone to sort of forget the 6 bad games that he's had in a row before, sort of thing. I think there's got to be a lot of change. One thing we haven't mentioned actually is Ceballos on loan from Real Madrid. Do you get to make that permanent deal on that? Do you take like a next loan deal? Like, where's he going back? What's the?
Genuinely don't rate Ceballos. I think that he's good, but he's just, for me, he's not that player that we really need right now. I think you've got players that do the exact same job as him. He makes a few good passes each game, but I mean, obviously today he just scored the winner for us. But I mean, apart from that, he's not really. Apart from that, I can't really think of anything where he's made a big impact in a game. I know at the start of the season, I was at a match when we played Burnley at the Emirates, and he was man of the match in that game. And he was like outstanding. He was making.
He had a good start when he was there. He got
he had a good start, but since then, for me, he's just not really done anything that deserves him to have a contract at Arsenal. And I don't think he wants to stay anyways. I think he's come out and said he's going to go back to Real Madrid.
Oh, wow.
If you don't want to be at the club, then I don't want you there. I want players right now, bringing it sort of back to the point that you were saying, Harvey, that want to play for the badge. We don't have enough of those. And I feel like a lot of players are sat at Arsenal just picking up a wage, thinking, oh, this is an easy life. But, we need players that want to play for us. And, if you don't want to come and you just want to pick up a wage, well, just leave, because we don't need players like that. We're going to need people that are committed to sort of getting this team turned around and getting us back to the top. And, you know, players like Ozil, you know, you see, he comes out and he's got great PR, but at the end of the day, all he cares about is picking up his wage packet. And, you know, he's dead wood now. Unfortunately, he's going to move on. He had a good few seasons at Arsenal.
Yeah, brilliant first season.
He should have had top assists, really, in the Premier League, but we had Giroud up front.
Oh, that, yeah.
We should have won.
I mentioned that earlier when I said Ozil, sorry. He had one of the best seasons we've seen from a midfielder in the Premier League in recent time. I remember he was on, I think the Premier League record for assists in a season is 20, isn't it? Or was it 21, 22? Thierry Henry?
It was 20,
Ozil,
I think.
Pardon, sorry?
I think it's 20 and Ozil finished with 19, I'm pretty sure.
Ozil had something like, I think it was like 15 or 16 assists in like February. Like, yeah. There were so many games left of the season. And Giroud just decided to become this donkey and not put away anything. He could finish his dinner, which I guess for a player like Ozil, and sorry to sort of cut you out here, but it's important to sort of say, when we're slating a player like Ozil, what he's had as a career. You know, he played with prime Ronaldo at Real Madrid. You know, he was at the top of his game. He was getting 20, 30 assists a season plus 10 goals. He was doing unbelievable things. And then not only to come to England and do it, but do it for more than one season was absolutely absurd. But again, with Arsenal having this problem with like a big dominant striker, I think that's part of his downfall. And Giroud, not to knock him, you know, he's scored some beautiful goals in his time, but he never was a 30-goal a season player. I think he might have peaked at 20, 22, 23 goals a season for Arsenal, I think, at the very best, which was good. But Ozil come from playing with the likes of Benzema, Higuain, you know, and Ronaldo to Giroud, and there's not really a level of comparison there. So
it's unfortunate for Ozil, because I think in his best seasons at Arsenal, he didn't really have that striker in front of him that sort of would have, you know, sort of backed up those stats. Like, I mean, he managed to get 19 assists with Giroud up front. So just imagine if he'd had a top striker, imagine what the numbers could have been. Yes. And definitely, if we'd had a player like Aubameyang when Ozil was in his prime at Arsenal, we would have won the league. And I think, you know, it's that sort of business that we've done in the past where we could have signed a top quality striker and we haven't. And it's sort of cost us, you know, in terms of titles. And now we've got Aubameyang, but Ozil's sort of, you know, past his best. And it's like, you know, it's just...
A prime Ozil with Aubameyang would have been...
It would have been lethal.
Ridiculous. It would have been crazy.
We'd have had the best attack in the league, hands down, at that time. But, you know, it's just... For me, the worst bit of transfer business we've done in recent years was actually giving Mesut Ozil 350 grand a week instead of Sanchez. We gave that money to Ozil, and in my eyes, it should have gone straight to Sanchez, who had proven himself, come in, made an instant impact, was hands down our best player. You know, he won us games on his own, and I think we should have definitely said to Ozil at that point, you know, it's time for you to move on and sort of prioritise Sanchez, because he was more of a key player in my eyes. And I think most Arsenal fans will agree with that.
Yeah, I mean... I think you have to look at it like, you could argue when Alexis Sanchez were at his best for Arsenal, he was the best player in the Premier League. You could have easily made that argument. And, you know, he had the same problem as Ozil eventually, sitting on his arse, couldn't be bothered, you know, made that money, and he wanted to move to Man United, and it just never picked up for him because, you know... I feel like...
sick of the fact that there was nobody in front of him, to be honest, because you looked at our team and Sanchez, I mean, if you're playing the way that Sanchez was playing, you're sort of the only man on the team that's really doing anything. You know, we still had Giroud up front. I mean, we had Lucas Perez, who actually went to West Ham eventually from Arsenal.
Let's not talk about that.
It was just another mediocre striker. We never really had that one player. Obviously, Aubameyang came in towards the end, but it was just never really that player that Sanchez needed in front of him. It was always the pressure was on Sanchez, and I think we were at that stage where we weren't going anywhere under Wenger, and obviously if you're playing how he was, you're not going to want to stick around. And I feel like Sanchez is more of a player that wants to win trophies compared to Mesut Ozil right now. I think Ozil's happy. Well, he's come out and said he's happy to stay at Arsenal. And obviously, why wouldn't you? You're picking up a massive wage for basically doing nothing. And that's not the sort of player that we need at the club. So, yeah, for me, definitely, if we could get rid of Ozil and get rid of the wage bill there, it just frees up a serious amount of money to sort of either give it to a player like Aubameyang to convince him to stay, or invest it again in a defender or another midfielder. But yeah, I think the midfield's it's got promising players coming in like Willock, Guendouzi. I think also Maitland-Niles deserves a mention as well. Actually, he played.
He does.
And I think I'd actually prefer him to start ahead of Hector Bellerin, because I think him and Pepe actually link a lot better than Bellerin. Like, I think Maitland-Niles plays to his strengths a lot more. But I think he wants to be a midfielder, Maitland-Niles. But if he could just sit in that right back role, he's definitely potential. Even just playing as a sort of like a like a wing back midfielder or whatever. He definitely deserves a mention. So there is promise, but again, it's just one of these things where it's currently not good enough to challenge.
Yeah, I feel like Arsenal need to be careful about that with Maitland-Niles though, because we've literally seen this situation before. Arsenal push a promising player to wing back. They say, no, I want to play my preferred position. They leave for another club that wear red and win a Premier League title. Oxlade Chamberlain, who a player I think would have really helped Arsenal as a midfielder, as a more central midfielder. And he's proven he can have an impact for Liverpool. Oh, go on, you go on.
No, I was just saying Chamberlain was a bit hot and cold, really. I don't know, he sometimes turned up and sometimes didn't, but I think we did a brilliant bit of business selling him for 40. Was it 40 million?
Is that how much you sold him for?
Yeah, Liverpool paid us some silly money for him, and I think at the time it was definitely a good bit of business. But we can't afford to lose promising players. We've done it for years and years, and we need to keep on to these players, because otherwise it's just a repeated cycle, isn't it? We're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, but I feel like if you've got 40 million from him, then I was completely wrong. But I feel like Maitland-Niles is someone they should try to keep, obviously, unless someone comes and offers 40 million for him. But
I think just before we go to the strike, actually, I've just thought of a few things to sort of end the midfield on. If you guys are both sort of done with your say, nobody's mentioned Emil Smith-Rowe. He's out on loan at the moment. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Nat, but I think Emil Smith-Rowe was played in cup games, and was it the Europa League where he started scoring a few goals for Arsenal, and then obviously the season he's out on loan now. I thought that was a good shout. Also with Ozil, he's got this disgusting 350k, a third of a million a week wage. His contract does expire at the end of next season, so whether or not it's waiting for him to leave on a free or trying to scrape any money that you can for him in the meantime, I'm not entirely sure what Arsenal fans would take of that. But just as a very, very last point on that, do you remember that in 2018, when me and you went to go watch the North London derby, and Torreira, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about here. Torreira gets the fourth goal to make it 4-2.
That was brilliant.
That gets carried a few rows forward with all the crowd going crazy. The flares everywhere, obviously. But I just thought that was a good mention, because you've got a post about it on your page. I saw earlier from a couple of years ago. There's a post about it saying that the atmosphere was brilliant, and it was absolutely brilliant. Obviously, as like a West Ham fan going to watch an Arsenal versus Tottenham game isn't ideal, but I'm glad I did. 4-2 was a brilliant result, and I think I'm at now. I think it's quite wise to move forward to the strikers, Gaff, if you want to start that off.
Yeah, it's like the forward line, and I think realistically we're all going to say Pepe should start and take that right-sided spot. He cost a lot of money, and he's been decent. He was like the big mentioned first player. In his first game, there you go, he dribbles past Van Dijk like 2 or 3 times in one game. He's proven he has talent, and it's kind of like that issue if he doesn't have the end product yet. But Raheem Sterling didn't have end product. There's all these Cristiano Ronaldo didn't have end product at first. You've got to look at it, and I'm not comparing Pepe to Ronaldo, but maybe, I don't know. I can see a little bit of Raheem Sterling in Pepe.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you just give him chance, and if at first you let him create, and you say, listen, pal, you create our chances, you do this and that, then eventually, he may grow into his own where he can just dribble past 3 or 4 players and slot it top corner like a Sterling can now. Or, I feel like he has to stay. And then on the left, I feel like with Saka and Martinelli, you don't really need to make any changes there either.
No, I can agree with that. Just on the Pepe thing as well, actually, I feel like the media really has got onto his back in his sort of debut season. I think, obviously, he didn't start, he wasn't, firing straight away as soon as he's come in. But there's a stat here, and he's actually been directly involved in 16 goals this season. He scored 8 goals and had 8 assists. And only Aubameyang's actually been involved in more goals for Arsenal. And I think, obviously, just because he hasn't, scored 20 goals or whatever, he's actually contributed quite a lot in games. He may not have had, bags of assists or bags of goals, but his sort of like presence, he's not scared to take on a defender. And that's obviously the sort of player we need. And it's only going to grow confidence as well. He's only just come into a league where it's a lot more competitive than, the league he's come from, considering he used to play in the French league, where I don't think it's really that competitive at all. You've come into a lot more sort of physical league as well. The Premier League's quite a tough league for attackers. Like, defenders will not be scared to sort of put in a rough challenge. And there's been many times in games where he's obviously been swiped out. Not to name one against West Ham, where I think it was, I can't remember who did it now, but completely cleaned him out. But I think harsh on Pepe this season. You've got to give him next year, where he's had his season to sort of settle in, and then that's when you judge him. I don't think you can sort of make a call on him right now and say, you're not good enough. I think you've got to give him next year for sure. But he's definitely a player that needs to start for us, because we paid big money for him, and he's got a lot of potential. He's shown promise. So I think next year is definitely the year where, if he's going to hit off, then it'll happen next year for him. I don't know what you guys think about it.
Yeah, I think Pepe will hit off. And speaking of the forward line, if we look at someone else from Lille who you may get to replace Aubameyang, because in my opinion, I think Aubameyang goes, and I've got 2 options. And, like we said, I think the left side stays the same. Martinelli has 10, I believe, and, Saka's been a massive impact. So, especially with Martinelli, you got him from some back-end club in Brazil, didn't you? That no one had heard of, realistically. So,
a little fine.
It's a great find for Arsenal, and maybe that's the way that you improve the club in the future. Clearly, you've got good enough scouts that maybe you send them to these countries where you won't find. Let me think, maybe Ukraine or some country where maybe you don't find many players, and because there's all the big scouts are in France, Spain, Germany, Brazil.
Yeah.
That's why you see a lot of teams like who have big things in their country. PSG have a really good academy in their country, and not a lot of people give it. But you've got Nkunku who plays for Leipzig. You've got all these players. You've got Diallo, I believe, came through PSG. They've got quite a lot of players, and it's because they can base all this big money in their own country. Arsenal have a big academy, but I don't think they can do that. So if I was Arsenal, if you've not got much money to spend, I feel like you have to try pump as much into your academy as possible. But if we're talking, you're going to get 50 million for Aubameyang, let's say. Then there's someone like Victor Osimhen who plays in Lille, plays for Lille, plays in Liga, and 13 goals, 4 assists, 4.4 aerial duels won. so he can do stuff in the air. But he's kind of like he's similar to Aubameyang, maybe because he's not as clinical yet. But in the end, he's 21, but he's incredibly quick and he can pressure defenders. And as I've just stated by his aerial wins, 4.4 a game is a lot. So he's proven he'll get up and he'll take chances. And you have to look at it as a sense that there isn't many strikers that you can get for 50 million who are young. So this is someone who maybe could help create for Pepe, create for Martinelli and Saka, bring everyone into the game. But if not him, then maybe if he does go to Real Madrid, maybe you do take the punt on Luka Jovic up front. He hasn't had the best season, but that's not because he barely played. In 18-19, so basically in every competition he played 63 games, got 35 goals and 11 assists. He had 18 in the Bundesliga. He had I'm going to say 17. 17 in the Bundesliga. He had 5 assists. Then in the Europa League, obviously, Nat, you should know a lot about this. You may have not known who Frankfurt won, but I can imagine a lot of Arsenal fans were thinking, don't match us up with that team because, they were smashing everyone. They had, Harvey's favourite striker, Sebastian Haller, up front with Jovic, and those two were just punting in goals for fun, I feel like if you can I know it might sound a bit ridiculous, but if you can take 20 million and Jovic, I feel like that's the best outcome you can get because I believe Jovic is still really young. I think he's 22?
22, 23?
22, and it's not like he's small. He's quite a physical guy. So, I feel like he's someone you could trust to, lead a front line. And if not, you could probably sell him on next season for more than what you paid, really.
Yeah. I just feel like, for me, Aubameyang, I'm so stuck on whether or not he's actually going to leave. Like, part of me thinks he'll stay, and then part of me does think he'll leave. But if I'm looking at this situation, if I'm people managing Arsenal, his goals are genuinely invaluable. Like, you couldn't put a price on it. Like, he has literally scored, I can't remember, something crazy. Like, without his goals this season, we'd be sat 18th in the Premier League. And it's like, that is appalling to think that.
Right, 18th.
It's just happening again. It's like Aubameyang is doing what Sanchez was doing. And if we let Aubameyang go, as soon as Sanchez left, all of our goals essentially dried up for a period of time. There was no sort of like player you could look to in a big game and think, right, he's going to be the player to get that goal. And if we let Aubameyang go, I'm really quite concerned that we're not going to be able to replace his goals, even if we were to sign, even if we did that swap deal with Real Madrid. I just don't think that it's going to provide us with the goals that we need. And especially if Lacazette's going as well for Partey. I mean, you've got no sort of standout striker as such. I mean, you've got, Nketiah, but you can't rely on him to bang you in 30 goals a season because he's only young, you know what I mean? So for me, I think Arsenal need to do absolutely everything to hold on to Aubameyang. If that's, selling Ozil, getting rid of his wage, do it 100%. If that's even, selling Lacazette and Ozil, you've just got to, for me, we've got to hold on to Aubameyang. I think if we lose him, we're in serious trouble. But then again, obviously, it is up to him as well whether or not he wants to stay. And at this stage of his career, he's obviously going to want to go and win a big trophy and, probably the Champions League and he's not going to currently do that with Arsenal. So it's just whether or not he's going to be willing to stay and sort of help us in this transition period, whether or not he's going to leave. But for me, I think Arsenal need to be doing absolutely everything they can to hold on to him. But I mean, obviously, we have got a lot of promising talent coming through. Martinelli, like you mentioned, he's had a really good season. Sort of when he's played, he's scored some big goals away at Chelsea. One was it was a very good goal, actually. Like, he had a lot of composure, sort of running one-on-one with the keeper. And I think in those situations
as well.
Yeah, he takes it past Kante. And I think actually it was more of an impressive finish because of the amount of time that he had. I feel like a lot of players, if you've got that much time to think about what you're doing, you can sort of mess it up. But he was composed and he slotted it away. And then, Nketiah, he's played well. And you've got like Reece Nelson and stuff. So it's a lot of promising talent, but we just need that striker that's going to bang us 30 goals a season. And currently that is Aubameyang, but if we do lose him, I'm very concerned about, where our goals are going to come from. I don't know what you guys think about it, but for me, I think Arsenal need to be, hands down, doing everything to keep hold of him.
Yeah, I think you have to do everything to keep him, but in the end, there's the chance that he doesn't stay. And there's if you want to take the risk, there's even someone in Austria called Patson Daka, who has 20. Says he has 24 goals here, and he's 13th for the Golden Shoe. If you want someone cheap and you have to take a risk, then take the risk on the guy. It says here that he's incredibly pacey, a good goal scorer. And I get it's in Austria, but he played with the same team as Haaland, and he clearly must have been scoring when Haaland was scoring too, unless he scored 24 goals since January.
Yeah.
Haaland's proven to work now, but you could always take a punt. Guendouzi doesn't want to stay. Okay, 30 million for Guendouzi, 50 million for Aubameyang, sell some other deadwood. Then you could be like, you know what? Let's spend 70 million on a striker. Let's do it.
Obviously, if we are getting rid of, deadwood or players that don't want to be there, you can easily, if it's Guendouzi, 30 million, like you said, you can definitely get that for him. And I think it is just going to be a sort of phase where we are getting rid of the players that don't want to be there, and we've just got we've got to spend smartly at the moment. I feel like if we can hold on to Aubameyang, then we can prioritise the defence, which for me is the area that needs, sort of looking at mainly. But if we do lose Aubameyang, striker becomes a priority for me, because without those goals, goals win games, and unfortunately, if you've not got a player that's going to score those goals, you really are screwed. So it's like, I think it's worrying times if we don't hold on to Aubameyang. But I'm praying that he does stay, because he is hands down our best attacker.
Oh, 100%. And you could argue he's the best attacker in the league. But, even looking at other players, that might not cost you a lot of money because of where they are, Maybe you can tout Danny Ings for like 30 million. And, if he can score being created from plebs in Southampton, if you've got Pepe created for him. And I feel like a problem with Arsenal, especially, is one thing I have to mention, is when Arsenal seem to bring players in, they just seem to, and I know this might sound weird, but they expect them to just, you fit my role. Giroud, you're our big pressing forward, even though you're a big bumbling target man who, should have balls hoofed into him and should be you shouldn't really be creating and doing stuff like that. I feel like if you get Danny Ings in, you don't go to Danny Ings, okay, you play the same role as Aubameyang. You go, okay, you're not as talented as Aubameyang with the ball at your feet, so we're going to change our system to put it around Danny Ings. We're going to change our system to put it around Jovic. I feel like Arsenal need to be a lot more fluid with the tactics now, because that's what every other good manager does. You build a system around your star striker. You don't fit the striker into your system.
Yeah. I think that's the mistake that we actually did with Ozil. We should have, as soon as we signed him, we should have built the team around him, because obviously when we signed him, he was in his prime still. And that's the mistake that we made. We should have gone out, got that top quality striker, that would have given Ozil the sort of player that he needs to feed, and gone from there. But again, poor transfer business from Arsenal. We didn't do that. And I think now, obviously, Ozil's, as we've said, he's sort of dead woods. With Aubameyang, if we can keep him, you've got to sort of build the team around him, because he is obviously that target man. He's that main guy that's going to get you those goals. He's your match winner. And if you can build a team around him, obviously is he 30 now? Something like that.
32, I think, last month. 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so he's old. So I say building a team around him maybe not the best idea. But if we're looking at a short-term solution, if you can get players that sort of fit to sort of play with him, then that's the best that we can do. Because I feel like even if we risk, so let's say we don't sell Aubameyang this year and we let him run his contract all the way down. If he scores the goals for us to get into the Champions League next season, for me, that's completely worth getting no money for Aubameyang, because having that Champions League money is like, it's complete gold dust for us right now. And just being in the Champions League alone helps attract bigger players, because obviously they want to play in the top competitions. So, I mean, if he doesn't sign a new contract, I would be, for risking getting no money for Aubameyang and holding onto him and just hoping that he scores the goals for us next year. But obviously, you don't know if that's going to happen because with Sanchez, he sort of became unmotivated and not bothered. So it's a risk. It's a risky game. But I think, his goals they're not, you can't put a price on them. So if we can use him to get into the Champions League next year, then I think by all means we should do. But preferably we hold on to him, he signs a new deal, and we can sort of go from there. But it's not looking likely at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not. But I feel like, before we end this off, we have to say, I feel like the best way for Arsenal to get to the Champions League is build through the youth that they currently have and make them the core of the squad. Because look at all the big things in history, the big teams, the 92 Man United team, there's all these teams that rely on, even Liverpool now, they've signed all these players, but they also have this backbone of the squad that they've played in cups, which is all youth team. Man United now are looking promising, mainly youth players. Barcelona under Pep Guardiola at the best spell ever. Basically, his Barcelona B team from when he was hired. I'm not saying that Arsenal are going to win the Premier League with these players, but I'm saying that if these players develop to how good they look, they 100% could be a top 4 team.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. There's a lot of promise. And I think, first of all, we've got to tie the players down, just, long-term deals, just to make sure that they're not gonna leave. Because one, for example, Saka, he's still not signed a new deal. I think he's definitely a player that we need to prioritise with signing a new contract, because he's proven that he can come in and he's got the talent there. There's no doubt about that. So if we can sort of secure him down to a long deal, it's not going to be playing on his mind about where he's going to be. He can sort of just focus on his football. But yeah, I definitely agree that we need to, definitely play a lot of the youth players. So, I mean, even if we get to play in the Europa League next year, for me, I would genuinely just play a lot of majority youth players, sort of get them playing as a team so that you can build from that. And obviously then play the main players in the Premier League and sort of go for the top 4 that way. Yeah. But yeah, definitely we've got a lot of young talent. So I agree with having to, build a team with that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think we have to agree. And, it's before we finish up, Harvey, is there anything you'd like to say before we finish up?
Yeah, I think Arsenal's forwards is probably the least controversial thing I'm going to say all afternoon, is that Arsenal's forward is the most promising side part of the team. With the players they've currently got, the players that they will have in the next few years with their youth academy. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. You've got Pepe on finance, but he's got a good sort of couple of years to come. I think his first year being rough or whatever, he's done enough. Like you said earlier, he's got the goal contributions to sort of show. Yes, a lot of them have been set pieces, free kicks and penalties and whatnot, but even still, it doesn't matter how you score them as long as you are scoring them. I think to say that his first season has been, rough or whatever, it's been a good first season. I think it can only get better from this point. He's 20, 25, I think just turned 26 recently. He's got another year or two, and then he'll be in his prime years. I'd like to think he'd be in Arsenal still by then. And Nketiah is a different story. I think Arsenal should have left Nketiah at Leeds for the rest of his loan spell. I think calling him back, I think it was a little bit premature. I think the striker's 21 years old. 21 years old, buckets and buckets of potential. He didn't really hit it off all that well at Leeds because, with Bielsa fancying Bamford, it's hard for another striker to sort of break through. And when he did play, He showed these sort of short bursts of pace, great finishing and whatnot. I think he only managed a few goals when he was at Leeds, and maybe not even that. But in the short time that he did sort of show on the pitch, he was promising. I think maybe going back to Leeds on a loan spell or staying there maybe not have been wise. Maybe another loan at another Championship team would have been absolutely ace. I think now, if he'd gone and played a season in the Championship, playing most of the games, he would absolutely tear it up. That isn't to say that he's not ready for the Premier League. Obviously, we've seen him in the last few games. I think against Man City, Nat said earlier that one of the only players that was in good form or showed like any sign of hope was Leno. I think Nketiah, I think he put in a good shift.
Like a bright spark. He was definitely one of the only positive outfield players.
He was a player that kept City's defence on their toes enough. I think it would be wise for them to keep a hold of him, and maybe he could gradually sort of overtake Lacazette in the squad. I think what Arsenal have done with Lacazette is poor. I think because he came from Lyon, didn't he? That is right. Yeah, came from Lyon on a 20-something goal season. You know, he'd been in Lyon. He'd been in links with every other bloody club in Europe for a season or two prior to that, with the numbers it was putting forward in a league heavily dominated by PSG. And then he came to Arsenal at a similar time to Aubameyang, and Aubameyang took the head role. I've heard loads of Arsenal fans over the years screaming, you know, why haven't they started together? Why haven't they played together? I'm pretty sure they have from time to time, but I think Arsenal have missed out on a lot of Lacazette's prime years. Maybe not the peak of his career, but some of the better ones, with him being sat on the bench or coming off the bench or playing every other 2 games or something like that. I don't think he's been given the time that he, like a player like he's shown he can be, sort of deserves. We brushed on Martinelli earlier. I think he's absolutely class. Another player, he's injured at the moment for I believe it's quite a serious injury. He's Arsenal news came out recently. They cleared up Leno's injury and said that he isn't going to be out for as long as people thought he would be at first. It isn't the same story for Martinelli. I'm not actually entirely sure what he's done. Does anyone know what Martinelli's done in terms of injury?
I think it's a knee ligament injury.
Not
serious, but he's out for sure.
Yeah, he'll be out for a long time. But from what we've seen, he actually, they got him on the cheap from some back end club in Brazil. Like he wasn't a name, and then he comes on the scene, he scores all these goals and whatnot, and gets the assists, and sort of blows people away. And like, oh my lord, this guy is 4 months younger than me. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's frightening what he's doing. So much talent at this age. It is frightening. And then as far as Aubameyang goes, another contract expiry at the end of next season. He's shown his class. He tied with a very, very informed Liverpool forward last season. 2 forwards, Salah and Mane. I think it was 22 they finished on. I remember he missed out on a chance to get a hat-trick that game. Ball came across and he puts it wide, which would have given him the golden boot on the last day of the season. But even then, he shared it with the 2 other forwards from Liverpool. He's shown his class. He was absolutely brilliant at Dortmund. He's come to Arsenal in arguably one of the hardest leagues in the world. Maybe not this season with the point gap at the top, but he has shown that he has this class to succeed. But then, like Nat had sort of mentioned earlier, without his goals this season, Arsenal would be in the relegation zones, which would make West Ham's fight a little bit easier, I guess. But he seems to be the only proof. I think proof's the wrong word. the only hope that Arsenal got of scoring goals. And I think you'll often find in a lot of teams that do succeed in leagues all around the world, especially in Europe, the ones that I know of, goals come from all over the pitch. You know, we saw Real Madrid win the league a couple of years ago, and they had 5 players in the starting 11 with more than 10 goals in that one season. You know, it's these teams that can get goals from the defence, from midfield, from numerous attackers that succeed. Nicolas Pepe, I'm sure, in the seasons to come, fingers crossed for Arsenal fans at least, with the money that they've spent on him, spending on him. Sorry, he also proves to be a player like that. Lacazette, I think he's past his best. Martinelli, I think he's got a couple of years before he really has that breakthrough starting 11 role, and I hope that he does get that. I really hope that Arsenal don't keep him on the bench for all these years, and you know, sort of waste his growth seasons. I wouldn't like to see that. I think he could become one of the great sort of forwards in the Premier League history, with the age that he's at now and what he's done so far. What I will mention quickly before I hand over back to Gaff to round it up is that Aubameyang, I've heard this from Nat earlier, from a lot of my friends that do sort of follow Arsenal, is that Aubameyang is played out of position, not to where he wants to be. Am I right in saying that he's played on the left and he'd rather be a striker, or is it the other way around now?
Yeah, he's played out wide on sort of the wing almost. And for me, obviously, and well, Aubameyang, he's a striker, so he's the sort of player that he needs to play central. I think Arteta sort of wants to use his pace on the wing, which I can understand. But I think you can put Saka in that position and he'll do just as well. And if you played Aubameyang through the middle, he's got a lot more chance of... I mean, he's still scoring plenty of goals when playing out wide. So, I mean, if you put him through the middle, you know, he's going to score even more. So, I mean, yeah, he definitely wants to play central. It's pretty obvious. So we need to put him there, really.
I think they would benefit from that, definitely. But on that topic, Gaff, that's my roundup of the forwards. Not a very harsh critic this time round. I think that's a place where Arsenal have for the future for sure.
Yeah, so basically to sum this entire thing up, well, we end good luck, Arsenal. Good luck. Enjoy being a mid-table team for a few years. But yeah, basically that's it for rebuilding Arsenal. We hope you all liked it. Thank you for Harvey and Nat for coming on today. So yeah, like the video, subscribe, share with your friends, please. Follow the Twitter, the Instagram, like everything on those. Go follow Nat's page. Anyway, thank you for all watching and goodbye.